The storm had rolled in without warning, swallowing the valley in gray. Hannah Carver leaned low in her saddle, her oilskin coat slick with rain, eyes fixed on the faint outline of the trail. The wind clawed at her hat and the mare's mane, carrying with it the bitter scent of cold earth. Nights like this reminded her of everything she tried to outlast: flood, frost, loneliness. She had grown used to silence, filling the space where her husband's voice once lived. Only the rhythm of Juniper's hooves kept her company now, steady and sure beneath her. It was near the ridge that she first saw it, a shadow too small to be danger, yet too alive to ignore. At first, she thought it was a trick of rain and dusk, but when she turned, it was there again. A foal, ribs showing through a coat the color of smoke, stumbling through mud to keep pace with her. Wild ones never came this close. Hannah slowed, uneasy. "Go on," she muttered, waving a gloved hand. The foal froze, ears twitching, then took another wavering step toward her. By the time she reached the gate of Iron Willow Ranch, night had fallen thick and wet. She dismounted stiffly, joints aching, and led Juniper into the barn. Lantern light spilled warm across the hay, the only promise of comfort. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. When she stepped outside again, the beam caught a frail shape near the fence, knees folded beneath it, breath shuddering in the cold. The same foal. Hannah's throat tightened. It should have turned back hours ago, back to whatever herd it came from. But there it was, half-collapsed, eyes wide and unblinking in the light. She hesitated, torn between scents and something softer she hadn't let herself feel in years. "You'll die out here," she whispered, not sure she meant it as warning or mercy. The foal flicked an ear but didn't move. Only its gaze seemed alive, searching hers with quiet desperation. The rain softened to drizzle, drumming faintly on the tin roof. Hannah felt the cold seep through her gloves, through her walls. With a muttered curse meant only for herself, she unlatched the gate. "Just a night," she said, voice low. The foal staggered forward, trembling, as though the invitation had been waiting all along. Inside the barn, Juniper snorted but didn't protest. Hannah spread an old blanket in the corner, knelt, and brushed the mud from the foal's flank with slow, deliberate care. Steam rose from its skin. Beneath the grime, she saw the faint pulse of life fighting to stay. When she finally stood, her lantern flickered once, sending shadows across the walls like ghosts. She looked down at the creature now sleeping against the straw and felt something shift inside her, small, unfamiliar, but undeniable. She closed the door softly, leaving the storm outside. Dawn broke pale and brittle, the kind of light that made everything seem half awake. The storm had passed, leaving the world glazed with frost. Hannah moved through the barn with a slow certainty, her breath misting in the air. The foal lay where she'd left it, curled like a fallen leaf, chest rising faintly beneath a film of straw. For a long moment she watched, half expecting stillness, until it stirred, weak but alive. Relief slipped through her like warmth after long ache. She fetched a bucket of warm mash, the same she made for sick stock, and set it beside the foal. It lifted its head uncertainly, eyes dull but curious. "You're stubborn," she murmured, crouching low. "Guess that makes two of us." The word surprised her, hanging in the quiet like a confession. When it refused the food, she coaxed it gently, dipping her fingers and brushing them against its mouth until it took a trembling taste. It was a small victory, but it filled the barn with a quiet sense of purpose she hadn't felt since Luke was alive. Outside, the land glistened. Inside, time slowed to the rhythm of her care. Fresh hay, gentle words, and the soft clatter of tin pails. She caught herself talking to it more each day, narrating her chores, almost forgetting she'd promised herself not to get attached. But each morning when she opened the door, the foal's head lifted, and she felt that promise weaken. She called it ash for the gray of its coat, though she told herself it was only practical to name what you needed to feed. By the end of the week, Ash could stand. Its legs wobbled like twigs in wind, but it managed a few steps before sinking again. Hannah steadied it with both hands, feeling the tremor of its effort against her palms. A memory rose. Luke's laughter as he taught her how to gentle a frightened colt, his belief that patience could mend anything wild. She'd once called him foolish for it. Now, In the hush of the barn, his faith felt like something she'd borrowed and forgotten to return. That night, she read by lantern light at the workbench. The old letter he'd written still lay folded beside his tools, creased and yellowed. She didn't read the words aloud, but her lips moved over the line she knew by heart. Keep your hands open. The world gives what you can hold. When she set it down, Ash stirred, rising unsteadily to its feet. It took 2 hesitant steps toward her, then rested its muzzle against her sleeve. Hannah froze, heart thudding with something fragile and bright. She reached up, brushing a stray curl from her face, and whispered, "Easy now. You're safe." Outside, wind rustled the dry grass like a sigh. The foal pressed closer, and Hannah didn't move away. Somewhere deep in the silence, a crack in her grief widened just enough for light to seep through. Spring arrived shyly, stitched from wind and thaw. The snow receded into the earth, revealing the dull gold of grass beneath. Hannah worked longer hours now, fixing fences, clearing the creek path, her movement steadier than before. Ash followed her everywhere, through the paddock, along the ridge, always close but never quite touching. Its ribs had softened beneath new muscle. Its eyes, once hollow, now glimmer with unspoken trust. Yet sometimes, when the sun dipped low, Hannah would catch the foal staring north, ears pricked toward the hills, as if listening for a voice she couldn't hear. She tried to ignore it at first. Wild creatures carried memories no human could mend. But when Ash began pacing restlessly at the fence, neighing into emptiness, unease settled in her gut. One dawn, she stepped outside to find a gate open and hoof prints leading away through dew-soaked grass. Panic came sharp and fast, cutting through the calm she'd built. Without a second thought, she saddled Juniper and rode hard toward the ridge, wind biting at her face. The trail wound narrow through birch and stone. Each print in the soil felt like a heartbeat slipping ahead of her reach. Hours passed before she found them, signs of struggle by the frozen creek. Churned mud, broken reeds, silence. Her chest tightened. Then, through the mist, she saw a pale shape half hidden among drifted leaves. Ash stood trembling beside a fallen mare, its muzzle nudging her still flank, desperate and confused. The sight hollowed Hannah's breath. She dismounted slowly, boots sinking into thawed ground. The mare was lifeless, her coat streaked with frost and mud. Scars ran across her legs, marks of wire or flight. Hannah knelt beside her, hand brushing the dull mane. "You were looking for her," she whispered to Ash, voice barely holding. "You just wanted her back." The foal pressed close, eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. For a long while, she said nothing. Only the creek's faint murmur filled the air. Then she slipped off her coat and laid it gently over the mare's body, as though the act might soften the ache of absence. A tear traced the weathered line of her cheek before she could stop it. Ash nickered softly, head resting against her shoulder. The touch broke her. Hannah leaned into the warmth, breathing through the pain that surfaced like thawed earth. Luke's words returned, quiet as prayer. Everything lost finds its way home. She rose, placing a steady hand along the foal's neck. "Let's go home now," she said, though the word carried new weight. Together they turned toward the valley, the light fading behind them. Each step was heavy, but the silence between them no longer felt empty. Somewhere beyond the hills, the sky opened wide and forgiving, and Hannah led the orphaned foal toward it, her face streaked with tears and resolve. Summer settled softly over iron willow, laying warmth across the field where frost had once bitten deep. The fences gleamed with new paint, and the barn hummed with quiet life. Hannah moved through her days with an ease she hadn't known in years, the rhythm of care woven into her breathing. Ash, no longer frail, grazed near the pasture's edge, her coat sleek and silver in the light. When Hannah called, she came trotting, strong, sure-footed, the wildness in her now tempered by trust. Watching her felt like watching a wound heal. Each morning began the same. Coffee steaming on the fence post, sunlight cutting through mist, and the soft thud of hooves in dew. Neighbors sometimes stopped by, curious about the young mare that shadowed her every step. Hannah only smiled and said, "She followed me once and never forgot how." The answer seemed enough. They gnawed, sensing the kind of story that didn't need telling. The letter Luke wrote remained pinned above the stall, edges frayed by wind. On quiet evenings, she still read it under the lamplight. The words, once a reminder of loss, had become a promise kept. Keep your hands open. She had, and something had found its way in. Grief hadn't vanished. It had simply learned to stand beside her, gentled by time and presence. One afternoon, the air shimmered with heat, cicadas thrumming from the cottonwoods. Hannah walked to the meadow gate, Ash following close behind. The hills beyond swayed in gold. It was the same place she had found the foal months ago, fragile and alone. Now the grass reached its belly. The wind played along its mane like a hymn. Hannah rested a hand on the latch. "Go on," she said softly. "You've earned it." For a moment, Ash hesitated, as if uncertain what freedom meant after safety. Then she stepped forward, slow at first, then running. Hooves drumming against the earth, mane catching sunlight like fire. She circled wide, joyous, the sound echoing through the valley. Hannah stood still, the ache in her chest blooming into something tender. When the mare paused atop the ridge and turned back, their eyes met. In that glance lived every unspoken thing: loss, love, forgiveness. The wind carried the scent of rain. Juniper nickered from barn. Hannah wiped her hands on her jeans, smiling faintly. She knew Ash would return when the weather turned, the way wild hearts often do once they learn the shape of home. As twilight deepened, she sat on the fence rail, lantern flickering beside her, and whispered into the cooling air, "Thank you for finding me." The stars rose slow above the ridge, each one a quiet witness. If this story touched you, subscribe or share where you're watching from. These stories matter.